The moment she stepped inside, the cold from the street clung to her skin like shame. Her shoes left dark, wet prints on the marble, too loud for a place like this. She stood in the grand lobby of the Galloway Hall, where chandeliers whispered light across velvet drapes and tuxedoed men laughed at things they could afford to forget. Rain matted her braids against her shoulders. Her coat, threadbare and long enough to drag behind her, smelled of bus stations and cafeteria bleach. In one hand, she carried a folded plastic bag. In the other, nothing. Eyes turned slowly, like dancers out of time. Champagne paused mid-air. A man lowered his flute. Expression caught between curiosity and caution. A woman in a red satin gown leaned into her husband and murmured behind the rim of her glass. She moved past them like fog, silent but impossible to ignore. Her destination was clear. The piano sat on the far end of the ballroom, untouched since the quartet finished warming up. A polished Steinway, black as lacquered stone, waiting for hands that knew how to approach it. No one said her name. No one asked where she belonged. From the balcony above, a voice called out, crisp as broken glass. "Excuse me, young lady." Clara Vance descended the staircase with measured steps, each one rehearsed. She wore a navy gown with silver beading that shimmered like frost. A woman of stature. Money in her teeth, steel in her spine. She stopped 2 steps from the girl and smiled the way one might smile at a wounded dog. "This is a private benefit," she said. "The entrance is on the other side of the building." The girl said nothing at first. Her eyes remained on the piano. Then she spoke. "I would like to play." Silence landed hard. "Play?" Clara echoed. "This is not an open mic night, sweetheart. I will only need 1 piece." The phrase unsettled Clara. It was not the way a child begged. It was the way a musician negotiated. A few chuckles broke the tension. Somewhere near the bar, a hedge fund manager smirked and whispered something cruel. Clara turned to the crowd, her voice louder now, meant for performance. "Well, what do you think? Should we let our guest try?" Laughter rippled, permission disguised as mockery. At the back of the room, Dr. Elias Moore stood frozen, his hand around a tumbler of bourbon. A professor emeritus from New Hampshire Conservatory, Elias had heard every type of student. What caught his attention now was not the girl's voice, it was her posture, the stillness, the restraint. He moved closer. "Let her," he said, not loudly. "Just firmly enough." Clara arched a sculpted brow. "Really, Elias? This is supposed to be a gala, not a talent show." "Exactly," he said, "for talented youth." A beat passed. Then Clara gave a theatrical sigh. "1 piece," she said, "and only if we get to choose it." The girl nodded. Clara turned to the pianist from earlier, a thin man in an ill-fitting tuxedo. "Mr. Dewey, a suggestion?" He smiled. "Beethoven, Für Elise. Everyone thinks they know it." Clara clapped her hands once, pleased. "There you are, dear. No excuses now." The girl walked to the piano. She adjusted the bench with small, precise movements, lifted the lid with both hands. Elias took 2 steps forward. His breath caught when he saw her hand position, not slapped down like a child's, curved, suspended, tense with knowing. She played the first note, not loud, not timid, pure. Then the second, the third. A hush fell, deep and total. Waitstaff halted. Someone let their glass slip against the tray. The notes did not stumble. They did not ask permission. She played as though the keys had known her since birth, as if the piano had been waiting for her to remember. Clara's smile twitched. A flicker, then vanished. The girl moved into the central motif with grace that betrayed years, not months. Her tempo was confident, but not arrogant. Each pause felt deliberate. Each passage breathed. Elias watched her hands, watched her face. He saw what could not be taught. Interpretation, precision, restraint that trembled with control. He leaned to the woman beside him and whispered, "This is not coincidence." The woman did not answer. Her fingers had stopped fiddling with her necklace. The girl reached the arpeggios. The crowd held its breath. She did not falter. She leaned in, body swaying ever so slightly, like she was following wind only she could hear. Clara stepped back, face unreadable now. The girl's eyes never left the keyboard. Her lips moved without sound. Mouthing the invisible rhythm passed down from someone long gone. When the final notes came, she let them linger in the air, hands hovering above the ivory like a priest after prayer. Then stillness. And then the applause. It began with Elias. Slow, measured. Then others. Some clapped with hesitation, others with awe. But none remained untouched. The girl stood and turned. A man near the bar called out, "What is your name?" She did not raise her chin. She did not smile. "Mariella," she said. Then she walked back through the corridor of silence she had created, her coat still damp with city rain, the sound of her name echoing longer than the applause ever would. Mariella did not look back. Outside, the rain had softened to mist. Street lights threw broken halos across the pavement, and the marble steps of Galloway Hall glistened under a sheen of light. Her feet hit the sidewalk with practiced aim, stepping around puddles she had memorized on the way in. A black sedan idled across the street. Its rear passenger door cracked open. Inside sat a woman with frost-colored hair pulled into a taut twist. Her eyes, sharp beneath rain-specked glasses, watched Mariella as if observing an animal both rare and endangered. "You took your time," she said once the girl was seated. "They made me wait." Rosa Templeton, documentarian, skeptic, chronic outsider, studied the girl's face in the rearview reflection. It was unreadable, composed. She reached across and handed Mariella a towel. "Did you get what you needed?" Mariella nodded once, then reached into the inner lining of her coat and pulled out a pin-sized device no larger than a bottle cap. She unscrewed the back and removed a micro SD card. Rosa slipped it into a silver case. "You were brilliant," she said, voice low. Mariella said nothing. The car pulled away from the curb and merged with the late-night traffic. Inside, the tension unspooled in slow spirals. "You know what they will say tomorrow," Rosa continued, almost to herself. "That you tricked them. That you used the piano like a weapon." Mariella stared out the window. The city blurred. Neon signs flickered in restaurant windows, casting strange hues across sleeping faces on buses. Somewhere above them, the first draft of tomorrow's headlines was already being typed. "They called it charity," she said finally. "But they wanted a performance. They got one." Back inside the ballroom, the aftermath was beginning to settle like dust on silk. Clara Vance stood motionless near the empty piano, a champagne flute untouched in her hand. She stared at the polished keys as if expecting them to speak. Elias Moore leaned against the column by the fireplace. He had not moved since the girl left. "She was trained," Clara said flatly. "Yes." "She must have studied at some private school, hidden talent, a scholarship maybe." "No." Clara turned. "You say that with such certainty." "I know trained hands," Elias said, "and I know inherited hands. That was not polish. That was blood memory." Clara scoffed. "Oh, please. No one is born knowing Beethoven." "No, but someone taught her to feel it." Elias looked her dead in the eye. "And you should ask yourself why that frightens you." Outside the ballroom, the conversations grew louder. Guests whispered behind hands. Someone was already Googling the name Mariella. Others were scanning the program, searching for any clue they had missed. The girl had not been listed. She had not existed until she played. Now, She was all anyone could talk about. The next morning, a video appeared on a quiet Vimeo channel with no more than 4 followers. The clip lasted exactly 3 minutes and 42 seconds. Shot from a discreet angle behind the waitstaff entrance, the footage captured everything from Clara's amused condescension to the silence after the final chord. By noon, it had 200,000 views. By evening, it had reached 1 million. Rosa sat in her apartment, lights off, the glow from her monitor painting lines across her face. She watched the view count tick upward in silence. Then she opened a second tab and began drafting the title for her upcoming documentary. Unseen, the talent they never asked to see. She stopped halfway through the description. Mariella sat beside her on the couch, still damp from a shower. Wrapped in a towel, her knees pulled tight to her chest. "Do you want me to use your full name?" Rosa asked gently. The girl stared at the flickering cursor on the screen. "No." "You sure?" "They only saw me once they heard me. That should be enough." Rosa nodded. In the faculty lounge at New Hampshire Conservatory, Elias replayed the video for a colleague. Professor Delaney, a woman known for her brutal honesty, watched the clip twice before speaking. "That girl's left hand is ridiculous," she said finally. "Those runs, the phrasing. You do not fake that." "I told you." "Where is she from?" "Know where we are looking." Delaney leaned back in her chair. "We need to find her." Elias shook his head slowly. "She already found us." Later that week, an anonymous envelope arrived at the conservatory's admissions office. Inside, a single USB stick labeled Proof. No return address. No note. The video files it contained were raw. Shaky footage from community centers, church basements, and broken classrooms. A girl, maybe 8 years old, playing beat-up pianos with missing keys and chipped lacquer. Always the same girl. Always the same hands. At the bottom of the folder, one final clip. A woman, elderly, stooped, with eyes full of stormlight, adjusting the fingers of the child in silence. No captions, no names. Delaney clicked pause. Her throat was tight. "She learned at home," she whispered. Elias nodded. "She learned in exile." On the other side of the city, Mariella stood at the railing of Rosa's apartment fire escape, watching the skyline stretch across the water. The breeze lifted the hem of her sweatshirt. Her fingers tapped against the railing in rhythm. Not music. Not yet. But it was coming. The train screeched into Roosevelt Station, slicing through the morning quiet like a blade. Mariella stood on the platform, hoodie pulled low over her brow, earbuds in though no music played. The rhythm in her mind was enough, Beethoven fading into Debussy, the way a tide turns without warning. She stepped into the car, took the corner seat facing the door, and let the world blur. Commuters sat with eyes fixed on their phones, insulated in silence and schedules. No one noticed the girl in thrifted denim, posture straight as a conductor's baton. Across the city, Clara Vance stood before a news crew on the marble steps of Galloway Hall, her smile polished to perfection. The press conference had been her idea. "We are proud to have provided a platform for an emerging artist," she said to the cluster of microphones. "It only reinforces our mission, to uplift unheard voices." A young journalist raised a hand. Was the girl invited? Clara's smile thinned, but held. She arrived unexpectedly, but we embraced the moment. The footage of Mariella's performance played behind her on a massive screen, cropped just enough to obscure the raw edge of truth. The grainy cell phone video had been replaced with high-resolution footage from the Gala's official feed. Rosa watched the broadcast from her laptop, paused the screen mid-smile, and sat back in her chair. She had seen this performance before, not Mariella's, the other one, the kind that draped itself in virtue while clawing for control. Mariella stepped off the train at 116th Street and walked 2 blocks west. The rain had returned, this time light and teasing, brushing her shoulders like memory. She passed shuttered bodegas and cracked playgrounds until she reached a narrow brownstone with chipped paint and no doorbell. Inside, the air smelled of incense and mildew. The second-floor hallway was dark, lit only by the sun bleeding through torn curtains. She knocked once. An old voice called out, "If you are selling something, I already have 2 of everything." Mariella opened the door anyway. The room beyond was cluttered but alive. Books stacked like barricades, sheet music tacked to the walls, a metronome ticking on the windowsill, and at the center, seated on a wooden stool, was a woman with snow-white dreadlocks and the posture of a monarch. "You are late," she said. Mariella dropped her bag. "I did not know if you wanted to see me." "I never stopped wanting to. You stopped showing up." Mariella stepped closer, her breath held. "I played," she said softly. The woman turned her head slightly. One eye was cloudy, milky with age. The other was clear and sharp. "I saw." "You saw the wrong version." "No," the woman said. "I saw what they could not polish. You wore truth on your fingers." She reached out and touched Mariella's wrist. "You are ready to finish what we started." They sat at the upright piano beneath the cracked window pane, side by side as they once had. Mariella placed her hands on the keys. Her teacher did not correct her. She only nodded. "Again." And Mariella played. Back at the conservatory, Elias Moore stood before a panel of administrators, the USB drive clutched in his palm. "I want her enrolled," he said. "With or without standard protocols." A woman in a gray suit leaned forward. "There are admissions guidelines for a reason. Portfolio, recommendation letters, academic scores." Elias raised an eyebrow. "And how many of your current students meet those because they were handed every advantage?" "She is talented, clearly, but we cannot bend policy just because a video went viral." "She is not a viral trend," Elias said, voice low. "She is the legacy of someone this institution once refused to hear." The room went still. The dean, a thin man with paper-colored skin, cleared his throat. "If she comes forward, if she applies formally, then we can reconsider." Elias exhaled, disappointed but unsurprised. Across town, in a basement rehearsal space that smelled of varnish and sweat, Rosa recorded as Mariella practiced scales in triplets. She said nothing, just watched. Mariella paused between runs. "They want me to disappear," she said. Rosa shrugged. "No, they want to claim you, then forget who you were before." Mariella's fingers danced across a silent chord progression. "They want a polished prodigy." "You are not here to be polished." The girl turned. "Then what am I here for?" Rosa hesitated. "To remind them what they threw away." At dusk, the conservatory's mailroom received a thick envelope addressed in blocky, deliberate letters. Inside was a single-page application. No essays, no photos, just a signature. M. Arlen. Tucked between the forms was a second USB. On it, a recording of Ravel's Pavane, performed with aching slowness and uncanny control. It was unsigned, but Elias knew the touch. By nightfall, Clara Vance's phone buzzed with a call from a private number. She answered on instinct. A voice spoke flat and unrecognizable. "You do not own the story." Then silence. She stared at the screen long after the call ended, a tremor spreading beneath her ribs. She had not just been outplayed. She had been outlived. The envelope lay on the dean's desk like something dangerous. He stared at it without touching it, as though the ink might burn through his fingers. The others had left hours ago, their polite refusals packed in stiff language and a desire not to make noise. But Elias remained. "It is just an application," the dean had said. Elias said nothing. He simply watched the man pretend neutrality. Eventually, the envelope was opened. The USB clicked into place. The recording began. Pavane pour un enfant défunt. Ravel's Lament for a Dead Princess played so slowly it felt like prayer. But it was not the tempo that caught Elias. It was the breath between the notes, the way each pause felt weighted, as if the pianist understood not only grief, but the silence that follows when no one comes to mourn. He closed his eyes. He remembered a hallway in Detroit decades ago. A girl no one admitted, though she played like the floorboards were telling her secrets. Her name had never appeared on a roster, but she had taught half the city to listen. He remembered, and now he understood. The girl was her granddaughter. In Rosa's apartment, Mariella crouched on the hardwood floor, sorting through an old milk crate filled with torn folders, broken pencils, and brittle sheet music that still smelled faintly of lavender and newsprint. Her fingers paused over a photograph buried between the pages. A woman with high cheekbones, eyes like bruises and a slight smirk, dressed in a floral blouse and wool skirt, seated at a baby grand. Mariella turned the photo over. In faint cursive, M. Arlen, 1974, Chicago. "She was your mother's sister," Rosa said from the kitchen. Mariella looked up. "I never met her." She taught at Dunbridge Community Center for 30 years, gave lessons for free after her shift cleaning offices downtown. Mariella nodded, silent. "She used to perform in secret," Rosa added. Bars, weddings, no one important ever noticed her. But she taught 10 kids who made it into conservatories, and none of them mentioned her. History rarely honors the ones who make others great. The next morning, Mariella walked the 7 blocks to the conservatory. The guards did not stop her this time. Her name had passed through enough mouths to grant access, even if it still lived in the margins. She sat outside the admissions office for over an hour. No one acknowledged her. No one made eye contact. Until a voice broke the stillness. "Follow me." Elias stood in the doorway, coat draped over his arm, his expression unreadable. She followed him down a long corridor with photographs of pale faces and triumphant smiles. Recital posters. Trophies. The hall smelled like dry wood and legacy. In a small rehearsal room lined with mirrors, he motioned to the piano. "Play whatever you like." Mariella took her time. She adjusted the bench, rolled her shoulders back, placed her hands just above the keys. Then she began. Not Beethoven, not Ravel. Something older. A Negro spiritual reshaped into jazz harmonics. A melody passed from throat to throat across railroads and kitchens, now translated into a minor key with syncopation that hinted at cities burning and rising. Elias did not move. When she finished, he exhaled through his nose. "Do you know who wrote that?" "No. My grandmother sang it as a child while picking tobacco." Mariella turned her head slightly. "Then I suppose she wrote it." That made him smile. "You do not belong here," he said gently, "but not because you are unqualified." Mariella's posture tightened. "You belong somewhere they do not know how to build yet," Elias said. Her throat worked, but no words came. Later that week, Galloway Hall hosted a follow-up gala, rebranded as a youth showcase, complete with press invites and formal programs. Clara Vance stood at the center of it all, rehearsed charm in place, dressed in gold this time. Every child who performed was vetted, polished, photogenic. The donors sipped, nodded, applauded. Midway through the evening, a rustling swept the crowd. A tall man in a gray suit stepped to the mic. Elias. Uninvited, unannounced. He tapped the microphone once. "I want to introduce a performer not on the program tonight," he said. Clara stepped forward, alarm rising like heat. Dr. Moore, we do have a—" He raised a hand. "She has been invited," he said simply. "By history, if not by you." From the back, Mariella walked forward, not in a gown, in a simple black blouse and canvas shoes, her braid loose over one shoulder. The room stilled. She sat at the piano without a word, adjusted the bench, and began to play. No introductions, no speeches. A fugue by Florence Price. Not just technical, defiant. The piece did not ask for approval. It demanded to be heard. The murmurs died. The donors leaned in. And Clara Vance, for the first time in 2 decades, had nothing to say. After the final chord, Mariella stood, bowed once, and left the stage without waiting for applause. Elias met her near the stairwell. "You have offers now," he said. "I do not want their offers." "What do you want?" Mariella looked past him, toward the corridor lined with portraits. "To build something that cannot be taken away." The night air hit her like an open hand, sharp, clear, smelling faintly of concrete dust and magnolia blooms clinging to the last warm current of spring. Mariella stepped off the Galloway Hall steps and kept walking. No one stopped her. Not this time. Not anymore. Inside, the donors were still seated. Waiters poured sparkling water and unfolded dessert menus as if nothing monumental had happened. Clara Vance smiled for cameras she no longer controlled, her teeth clenched behind polished lips. She had orchestrated the evening with intention, programs printed, cameras staged, hashtags pre-approved. But Mariella had ruptured it all without force, without even raising her voice. Just music, just truth. That was the part Clara could not stomach, that she had been outmatched not by spectacle, but by restraint. Elias stood by the side door, coat over one arm, watching the sidewalk. He had not needed to follow her, but he did. Mariella walked 4 blocks before she noticed his shadow pacing her own. "You always follow students this far?" she asked without looking back. "I only follow the ones I believe in," he said. She stopped under a flickering lamppost and turned to face him. Her face was unreadable but not closed. "They will not offer me the scholarship," she said. "No," he admitted. "They will offer you something smaller and expect you to feel grateful." Mariella's eyes narrowed. "Then why did you bring me here?" "Because you needed to see what you were never supposed to believe you could surpass." A wind swept between them, dry leaves scraping the sidewalk. "I do not want to be a symbol," she said. "Good," Elias replied. "Symbols get carved. They do not get listened to." A car passed slowly. Headlights lit the side of her face, highlighting the bruise-colored shadows under her eyes. She had not slept, not since the recording, not since the invitation she never asked for. The world wanted her now, but only on its terms. Back at Rose's apartment, the voicemail light blinked red. 4 agents, 2 label scouts, 1 morning show producer, all circling, all interested, all flattering themselves with how early they had discovered her. Rosa sat at the desk, cigarette half burned between her fingers. She did not smoke, not anymore. But tonight, the air needed damage to feel honest. She pressed play on the newest message. "This is Darian Wolfe from Atlantic Media. I just wanted to say how profoundly moved we were by Mariella's performance. We would love to discuss a profile opportunity. Full feature, video doc, streaming options. Delete. Next. I am calling from the Arts Initiative Fund. We are establishing a new platform for youth. Delete. Click. Silence." Rosa leaned back, exhaled, and let the ash burn out on its own. Mariella returned an hour later, silent but present. She moved to the piano in the corner, the upright one rescued from a community college closure, the ivory chipped, the middle D forever slightly sharp. She sat and stared at the keys. "You could take their offers," Rosa said quietly.
I could,
Mariella replied.
and
I would lose something I have not named yet. Rosa stood behind her, arms crossed over her chest. You know what that is? Mariella's fingers traced the grooves between the keys. My story. Rosa nodded once, slowly. Then hold on to it, she said. Because once they rewrite it, you will spend the rest of your life trying to recover it. At the conservatory, Elias sat in his office alone. The air smelled of paper and varnish. On his desk, a folder sat open. Inside, notes from a board meeting, half-hearted suggestions to create a new outreach program, a proposal to name a scholarship in honor of diversity. He closed the folder. He did not want to honor a concept. He wanted to change who got invited in the first place. The next day, a letter arrived, handwritten in blue ink on cream stationery. No letterhead, no return address. It read, I will not accept what you offer in pieces. If you want me whole. If not, I will continue elsewhere. But I will not disappear. M. He smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. It was the kind that came from seeing something finally, after years of squinting through shadow. Elsewhere in the city, in a quiet room at a local church that still hosted weekend music classes for whoever could show up, Mariella sat across from 4 children under the age of 10. They had never touched a piano. She laid their fingers across the keys one by one. This note, she said, tapping middle C, is home. You can always come back to it. The children laughed, uncertain but willing. Mariella smiled once. Not wide, but real. She did not need their praise. She needed their sound. And in that moment, for the first time in weeks, she felt steady again. Not because she had won anything, but because she had not been turned. The first article landed on a Tuesday, buried halfway through the culture section. Unsung virtuoso sparks debate on institutional access. The byline belonged to a junior writer from the Tribune who had attended the gala by accident, filling in for a society reporter with food poisoning. The piece was restrained, almost apologetic. But the video embedded at the top told another story. Mariella, seated at the Steinway, face calm, body still, hands moving like water over glass. No introduction, no banner behind her, just sound, pure and unvarnished. A sound that refused to be ignored. By Friday, the story had been picked up by 3 national outlets. The headlines grew bolder. Prodigy or protest? When greatness comes uninvited. The girl they tried not to see. Clara Vance read them all from the privacy of her townhouse parlor, blinds drawn, phone silenced. She sipped tea she could not taste and scrolled endlessly, pausing only to note which photos made her look composed and which made her look cornered. Publicly, she had released a statement through the conservatory's PR team. We are honored to have played a part in showcasing emerging voices in the arts. We remain committed to inclusion. Privately, she made calls, board members, donors, trustees. They are painting us like gatekeepers, she said to one. We must reclaim the story. The donor had paused before replying. Maybe we were gatekeepers. Clara did not speak to him again. Elsewhere, in a borrowed studio on the south side, Mariella rehearsed. The room was small, acoustic foam peeling from the walls, old flyers still tacked to the door, auditions, open mics, free workshops, long past. But the upright piano was well tuned, and the light from the high window made the dust shimmer like memory. She played not for stage, not for audience. She played to stay clean. Rosa sat in the corner, camera untouched. A week ago she would have filmed. Now she just listened. There were no cameras in the places where healing happened. Only silence and patience. Mariella stopped mid-measure. What are they saying now? She asked without looking up. Rosa reached for her phone, then hesitated. Do you want the truth or the noise? Both. Rosa read from a forum post. Some say you planned it all, that you faked being poor to bait sympathy, that you are exploiting pain for attention. Mariella said nothing. Another scroll. One reviewer called you the antidote to mediocrity, said you reminded them why music matters. Still no reaction. They are arguing about whether you are self-made or made up. Mariella finally looked up. They are still trying to decide if I am real. Rosa nodded. They want a narrative, but you keep giving them a life. In the hallway, a janitor wheeled a mop bucket past the door, humming faintly under his breath. Mariella recognized the tune. A folk melody buried somewhere between spiritual and lullaby. The kind sung to babies by mothers who had no choice but to be strong. She stood and opened the door. The man paused. Did I disturb you? He asked. No, she said. What was that song? He smiled, surprised. Old one. My grandmother used to sing it while shelling peas. Mariella nodded. Can you sing it again? He cleared his throat, began to hum. She listened. Later that night she played it back on the piano, changed the key, shifted the rhythm, kept the bones, let the ghosts move through it. When she finished, Rosa whispered, You are building a map. Mariella replied, No, I am building a language they cannot mistranslate. At the conservatory, Elias sat in an empty lecture hall, lights low, a program draft in his lap. The admissions committee had agreed, reluctantly, to create a performance residency named after a community contributor, a compromise. They refused to name Mariella outright. He scribbled a line across the page, then again, then pressed the pen so hard the nib snapped. He no longer wanted her inside this institution. He wanted the institution to look like her. On a Sunday, Mariella received a letter, handwritten, no return address. The penmanship was erratic, jagged. It read, I saw you. I heard you. They tried to do the same to me in 1962. I never got the stage. But I built others. Keep building. FL. She folded the letter and placed it inside the old milk crate, the one where she kept her grandmother's music, a chipped tuning fork, and 3 photos without dates. Rosa entered, carrying 2 styrofoam cups of soup. They invited you to play at the Chamber Hall next month, she said. Mariella raised her eyebrows. For what cause? Fundraiser, community music access. Sponsored by the same people who once called me a disruption. Rosa shrugged. They are still learning the language. Mariella took the soup, set it down. Then let them listen longer. Outside, the city shifted. Headlines faded. New outrage bloomed. The internet moved on. But the story did not die. It rippled. A 10-year-old girl in New Orleans recorded herself playing a 4-chord melody she titled After Mariella. A high school senior in Milwaukee cited the Gala video in her scholarship essay. A music teacher in Tucson used Mariella's Ravel performance to explain phrasing to 4th graders. And in a small room on the west side of Chicago, a girl who had never been on stage laid her fingers on an old keyboard and felt the world open, not with applause, but with possibility. The auditorium was smaller than she imagined. No chandelier, no velvet curtains, no hushed donors seated in half-light. Just plastic chairs, some cracked. Fluorescent tubes buzzed overhead like tired thoughts. And yet, when Mariella stepped into the center of the room, it felt like the most honest stage she had ever stood on. The community center smelled of cleaning fluid and old paper. Folding tables lined the back wall, stacked with juice boxes and program flyers. A cardboard sign taped to the entrance read, Saturday, Music Stories, Youth Open Workshop. Special guest, M. Arlen. Children huddled on the floor cross-legged, some with wide eyes, others distracted by half-melted crayons. No one clapped when Mariella entered. No one whispered. She was not a headline here, just a name scribbled in marker on the sign-in sheet. She walked to the piano, upright, dull, middle octave worn smooth, and sat. Then she waited. A girl in a red hoodie raised her hand. "Are you famous?" Mariella looked at her. "Not really." The girl scrunched her face. "But they talk about you on the internet." "I am still learning," Mariella said. "Famous people pretend they are finished." A boy in the back piped up. "Do you play TikTok songs?" Laughter rippled. Mariella smiled faintly. "Sometimes, but I like to play things that come from inside." Another voice asked, "What if you do not have anything inside?" She leaned forward, elbows on her knees. "Then listen, it will come." That afternoon she taught without teaching, showed them how to sit, how to press softly, how to hear the difference between loud and proud, between silence and fear. She did not correct them when they were off tempo. She just kept playing until they found her again. Outside the building, Rosa leaned against the railing, camera off. She watched through the window as Mariella guided small fingers across chipped keys. A different kind of performance. One without applause, one without punishment. This, Rosa thought, was what it meant to be irreversible. At dusk, Elias met with the director of the conservatory behind closed doors. He brought a folder. Inside it were transcripts, interviews, recordings, letters, not about Mariella. About the woman before her. The one who had played in back rooms and taught in kitchens and whose name had never appeared in program notes. Mariella's grandmother. Her story, Elias said, was not a myth. It was a mirror. They always called her angry, Elias said. What she really was unbought. The director skimmed the first page. This is well beyond the scope of admissions. That is the point. He placed the last item on the table. A photo, black and white, slightly torn, of a younger Mariella at age 5, seated on her grandmother's lap at an upright piano, her face half hidden, her hands already curved with instinct. This institution does not need a new initiative, Elias said. It needs an apology. The director did not respond, but he kept the folder. That night, Rosa uploaded a new video. No title, no caption. Just 8 minutes of footage showing Mariella teaching the children. No music overlaid, no editing, no press release. The views came slower this time, but those who watched stayed. Comments were fewer, but deeper. She plays like someone who is remembering something important. My daughter tried piano after watching this. She cried after the first note. Then tried again. I did not know someone could sound like that without being asked to. Mariella never replied to the comments, but she read them. Sometimes twice. She moved through the city differently now. Not hidden, not exposed, just present. A bookstore asked her to speak. She declined. A university requested a masterclass. She countered, "Let me teach students with no formal training." They declined. She did not follow up. Instead, she kept showing up at the community center every Saturday. Word spread slowly, like smoke under a door. Young musicians came from neighborhoods not marked on maps. Some brought notebooks. Some brought nothing. Mariella brought only the promise that no one would be erased. Clara Vance, meanwhile, sat in a boardroom surrounded by new faces and revised expectations. The language had changed. Equity, access, authenticity. But the policies had not. We should consider naming the new practice wing after a woman of color, someone suggested. Clara smiled tightly. Of course. Any suggestions? One voice murmured, Arlen. Another added, it would signal that we are listening. Clara shifted in her chair. And yet,
She refused our offers.
She refused the conditions. Silence. The motion passed. The Margaret Arlen Practice Hall would be unveiled in spring. No one was certain whether Mariella would attend. She did not. Instead, that day she sat with an 11-year-old boy who had just lost his father. The boy refused to speak, but kept tapping middle C over and over. Mariella placed her hand over his, held it there until the tapping slowed, then showed him how to move to D. That was the kind of unveiling she understood. That was the name she answered to. The rain returned on a Wednesday morning, soft and cold, the kind that blurred windows and made silence feel heavier. Mariella sat by the window in Rosa's apartment, legs tucked beneath her, a legal pad balanced on her knees. She was writing scales, by hand, the old way, drawing clefs and key signatures like notes in a letter to someone she had never met. Rosa walked in holding 2 cups of coffee. "You are quiet." "I am thinking," Mariella said without looking up. "About what?" Mariella tapped her pencil against the edge of the pad. "What happens when the music ends?" Rosa sat beside her. "Then you begin again." "No," Mariella said. "I mean when they stop listening." Rosa sipped her coffee. "They always stop listening," she said. "That is not your fault." Outside, buses hissed along wet streets. The city pulsed with its usual indifference. Somewhere, a billboard still featured her face, grainy still from the viral video, her fingers hovering over the piano like wings about to lift. Mariella had never looked at it in person. Later that afternoon, an envelope arrived by courier. No name on the front. Just the address written in formal script. Inside, an invitation. A private ceremony at the conservatory. Dedication of the new hall. The Margaret Arlen Practice Wing. A small event, mostly faculty, alumni, donors. Her presence was not required, but deeply welcomed. Mariella placed the card on the table and walked away. Rosa read it after she left. The event took place 2 weeks later under low ceilings and soft lights. White wine, string quartet, catered food arranged to look effortless. The plaque was bronze, mounted near the entryway. In honor of Margaret Arlen. A legacy written in sound and silence. Clara Vance gave a speech. Polished. Measured. She used words like community and intergenerational excellence. Her voice never cracked. Elias stood in the back, arms crossed. He did not speak, but his eyes stayed fixed on the plaque. Mariella did not attend. Instead, she boarded a northbound train with nothing but her satchel, a pair of headphones, and the sheet music her grandmother had once copied by hand. The journey was long. She stared out the window as towns slipped by. Old brick buildings, rusted signage, water towers that looked like forgotten prayers. Her destination was not public, not staged. It was a church in Cleveland. Small. Cinder-block walls. Once a place of worship, now repurposed as a music co-op for students who had nowhere else to go. Inside, an old upright piano leaned against the wall like a tired sentinel. Half the keys stuck. A few were missing. Still, she sat. No camera, no audience, only the children. They gathered in a circle around her. Some knew her name. Most did not. It did not matter. She placed her fingers on the keys and played the first notes of a hymn not written down. Something passed through her then, not performance, not proof, but inheritance. She was not there to impress. She was there to echo. The kids listened, really listened. And when she finished, one girl raised her hand. "Did you make that up?" Mariella smiled gently.
"I remembered it."
Back in the city, Clara stood before a mirror in the conservatory's west hallway. She straightened her blouse, reapplied lipstick. She had done everything right. Rebranded, adjusted, opened the gates just wide enough to stay ahead of criticism, and yet the girl had not come. No statement, no photo, just absence. The kind that speaks louder than arrival. That night, Elias received a package by mail. No return address. Inside, a cassette tape, hand-labeled, for the ones who listened before it was safe to listen. He played it in his office. It was not a song, it was a conversation. Mariella and her grandmother. One voice young, curious, the other deep, soft with age. "How do I know if it's good?" Mariella asked. "It's good when it tells the truth. But what if they don't like it? They don't have to." The tape ended with silence, then laughter, then a single note. Back at the community center, Mariella packed up the folding chairs. The children had gone. The room was quiet. She sat alone for a long while. Not waiting, not hiding, just still. Rosa would meet her later. There was talk of a foundation, a teaching archive, a new project to record forgotten songs from oral memory. But tonight, there were no plans. Only the slow settling of dust on wood, and the weight of a name that no longer needed defending, because now it had been spoken, fully, clearly and in its own time.